Today we are ranking thrash metal legends Overkill, and their incredible 20 full-length albums.
Why did you make me do this?
Joking aside, we're going to kick things off with Feel the Fire in 1985. Now, as always, I want to be clear, this is just my own subjective ranking based on my own taste. That should go without saying, but I've found in particular the real head-up-their-ass thrash metal nerds take different opinions way too personally. This has more of a heavy metal energy, kind of like Iron Maiden, which just isn't really my thing in general. I like it in small doses, but so where this album ranks for you is going to be largely dependent on how you feel about that sound. Like, there's plenty objectively good music to appreciate here, especially in the guitar work and Ellsworth's vocal range, but it's just not really my personal style. I'm just putting this one at good. I know it's sacrilege, but I'll hopefully make up for it later, but not yet. Because we're moving on to Taking Over in 1987. Now, this is a legendary album, no question about that, but it's that same type of sound, and I do like how they've expanded on the vocal dynamics and also some harsher moments with the gang vocals. It also has one of the most 80s cover arts of all time. Again, solid in terms of performances, but just not really what I look for in thrash. It makes me want to listen to something like Dio instead. But I do like the atmosphere of Fatal If Swallowed, great build-up with the rumbling bass and pounding drums in the guitars. Electro Violence is pretty fun too. It did get them on Billboard as well for the first time at 191. So better than the last one, but still just for me at good. I know plenty of fans would put this at A or even S tier, but it's my list, my rules, and I just don't really consider legacy as much. It's more about how much I actually enjoy each album personally.
Big whoop, wanna fight about it?
Moving on, Under the Influence in 1988. So starting to sound a little bit more overtly thrash with this album, with heavier chugging riffing and the vocal delivery feeling a little bit more in line with bands like Exodus, getting a lot wilder with the solos. The old influences are still clear, but I can also see them slowly pivoting in a different direction. Hello from the Gutter still has more of that 70s flair, but it's also a pretty fun song. But then others like Brain Fade and Shred, true to its name, lean more towards straight headbangers. And the rumbling bass and imposing palm-muted riffs on End of the Line and Drunken Wisdom sound almost like we're starting up a Ride the Lightning era Metallica song. I'll also say Bob even sounds a bit like Steve Souza when he says, "We got better things to do." I'm gonna put this one at great tier. Alright, but then the big one, the Years of Decay in 1989. So they really double down on those heavier riffs with the opener, Time to Kill, but it's around Elimination that I get a real smile on my face with this one and just go,
That's good shit right there.
This is also a more dynamic record with more standout moments and stylistic variety. I love the little slappy bass solo before the transition on Nothing to Die For. Dee continuing to prove himself as one of the best bass players in the genre. Playing with Spiders, Skull Crusher gets surprisingly doomy for the first half, which makes sense in a way since Ellsworth said Black Sabbath was an influence on this one. Who Tends the Fire has a super spooky intro and more dramatic pacing, and the title track has a big, clean build-up, kind of like Metallica's One. And then we end on a super heavy note with Evil Never Dies. This is the first of 2 Overkill albums produced by Terry Date, and the last album with guitarist and key songwriter Bobby Gustafson due to tension with Bobby Blitz and Dee Dee Verney. Easy to see why this one is a fan favorite personally, and the top rated on Metal Storm as well, and was also a major influence on the groove metal movement. I'm putting this one at perfection. Hopefully y'all can be happy with that at least. Next up we have Horrorscope in 1991. This is the first album with guitarist duo Merritt Gant and Rob Canavino. More solid bangers like Infectious and Blood Money. Thanks for Nothing has great groove and more awesome bass work. And speaking of which, we're seemingly coming full circle with groove metal here, as it feels like Bare Bones was pretty clearly influenced by Cowboys from Hell, which came out a year earlier. And the slower bluesy title track also has some similar Pantera vibes to it. Again, both albums were produced by Terry Date. It does feel like a little bit of a step down from the previous album, but still consistently strong. Billboard number 29 and Overkill's best-selling album of the Nielsen SoundScan era. I'm going to also put this one up at perfection, just a little bit lower. They followed that up with I Hear Black in 1993. Continuing the trajectory into dark atmosphere and groove metal, I like the guitar work, but it generally does make me just wish I had Phil Anselmo's vocals over it instead at this point. I feel like this is very much a case of the student becoming the master. And just in general, I really don't care much for Billy's performance here. Lots of clumsily put together vocal melodies with a very Brian Johnson sounding delivery, and then just straight up misses like Shades of Grey, which feels like Overkill's failed attempt at like Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and whatever Spiritual Void is. Yeah, this is the first album I would legitimately put at bad.
Know your fucking place, trash.
Next up is W.F.O. in 1994. Where It Hurts is a solid opener with good energy, and They Eat Their Young cooks it up. Fast Junkie has some really great riffing. Overall, it feels like a step back in the right direction here, and considering just how much they crank the bass up, it seems clear that they want DD front and center, especially on crunches like What's Your Problem. The main issue continues to be the pretty subpar vocals though, and Under One is kind of a lame song. This is the first album that Overkill produced themselves. This one was kind of teetering between good and okay. I'm going to put it towards the top of a okay tier. Then we got The Killing Kind in 1996. Going through a label change here, this is the first album also to feature new guitarists Joe Comia and Sebastian Marino. The little yaz on Battle are just plain silly and acts as a fair summary of what to expect from this one. More lame dad metal with decent riffs here and there. Half the time I feel like I'm listening to like Snakes and Barrels. And Boldface Pagan Stomp just makes me want to delete myself. Another one I would put in bad tier. Fortunately though, after that we get From the Underground and Below in 1997. Thank God, getting heavy again, but this back and forth is really giving me whiplash in terms of quality. It Lives has an almost Fear Factory vibe to the riffing, and really the entire album has a surprisingly dark industrial feel to it. Favorites on this one, Genesia Fucked, which has some pretty strong Ministry influence, and the admittedly cheesy but undeniably foot-tap-inducing Rip and Tear. The only tracks I don't love are Half Past Dead, and especially the power ballad Promises, which feels so out of place here, sandwiched between the aforementioned Rip and Tear and closer Little Bit of Murder. This is actually one of Bobby's favorite albums and a much needed banger after some real duds. I'm putting this one higher up on great tier. Next up is Necroshine in 1999. Wash me eyes, I jump, but be careful what you see. The title track on this one is a total hype setter and appropriately has been played at almost every live show since its release. Revelation bringing the speed and a little bit more of that industrial energy. Forked Tongue Kiss bringing some serious chugs. Honestly, both of those were giving me some Static X vibes in the guitars in a weird way. On the flip side, Stone Cold Jesus and Black Line are pretty lame, so it's good, not quite as good as the last one, so I'm gonna put it at good tier. Moving into the second half and a new millennium with Bloodletting in 2000. This one was recorded as a 4-piece after the departure of guitarist Joe Comia and Sebastian Marino, taking more of a straight thrash approach here with some solid songs like Death Comes Out to Play and My Name is Pain with that very Painkiller-esque drum intro. It's a fine album, but it just feels a little bit forgettable, and also Blown Away is kind of weird. Don't have a ton of notes on this one, it just sort of landed at okay tier. Next up, Killbox 13 in 2003. Another nice crunchy bass intro to this one with Devil by the Tail, good grooves and start-stop riffing as well as a really infectious vocal performance. And honestly, Bobby really sounds like he's going all in on these songs, which is the first time in a while. It's almost kind of like a Alice Cooper theatric approach with Crystal Clear too. Damned has a great stomp to it with yet more fun moments on the bass, while No Lights ups the dynamics with big melodic leads and wailing soloing. Fantastic riffing on The Sound of Dying and Struck Down. Definitely a bit more of a radio-ready sound to this one, but I don't think that's a bad thing on its own, and this one ended up at fantastic. Then we had Relics in 2005. Within Your Eyes is a decent opener, but not with the same punch in the face as with Killbox. Love has fun playing with quiet and loud and also feels like it has a little bit of a Lamb of God in it as well. Plenty of good riffs and soloing on the likes of Loaded Rack, but songs just feel like they drag on a bit too long, and the first half is definitely better than the second. It's a significant step down from the last one, but still a pretty consistently enjoyable, if somewhat, again, less memorable listen. So another one falling into the okay territory. Then we got Immortalis in 2007. Listening to these three in a row actually gives me a sense of deja vu, as they are all very similar, but just varying in overall quality. Unfortunately, this one feels like it's picking up from the weaker half of Relics and on an even steeper trajectory downwards. I like the gang vocals on What It Takes, and speaking of Lamb of God on the last one, it's cool to hear Randy Blythe make an appearance on Skull and Bones, even if that song is not that great. Overkill 5 is also a solid closer. It's just that most of the others, like Shadow of Doubt and Hellish Pride, just feel painfully average to me, so this one even dipped down into bad territory. But another rallying cry here with the beloved Ironbound in 2010. Back to the thrash metal energy. I had really been looking forward to getting to this album, as everyone told me this was the big resurgence record, and in fact it's rated the same as the Years of Decay on Metal Storm. Bringing the speed back right from the top, and tracks like Bring Me the Night honestly do feel like they could have been on the earlier albums. Massive sounding production though. Some super catchy backup vocals on Give a Little, In Vain, and the SRC. Endless War has really fun Iron Maiden-esque dueling harmonies making a comeback. Fantastic solo on the title track, and loving the proggier sounding riffs on The Head and The Heart. Is it as good as the Years of Decay? Not quite, but I think it's about as close as they've come in a long time. So this one actually also made it up to perfection. I put it right after that album.
What is dead may never die.
What is dead may never die.
They followed that up with The Electric Age in 2012.
Just get with the losing, see them in the eyes. Won't make for bruising, the harder you get by.
Keeping that same high energy going with Come and Get It, and even stepping it up a few notches with the rollicking Electric Rattlesnake. Great punky D-beat energy on Save Yourself and Good Night. At times I almost feel like I'm listening to a Pennywise album with this one. Drop the Hammer Down and All Over, but the shouting are seriously catchy. Great pull-off hooks on 21st Century Man. I don't love Wish You Were Dead or Black Days, but they're still pretty solid, and this was the first Overkill album to crack the top 100 at number 77. Really enjoyed this one, maybe not quite as much as that last one, but it's ending up at fantastic tier. Next up is White Devil Armory in 2014. So not exactly starting off on the right foot here with Armorist. This song is beyond corny and about as paint by numbers as it gets. Down to the Bone is a little better, but still has similar issues for me, and Pig is just straight up annoying. Bitter Pill is just okay. I'll be really interested to see in the comments on this one, because it's wild that such overall subtle variations in performance and songwriting can make me either totally agree with the popular opinion or swing in the complete opposite direction. There are some stronger tracks in the second half, like Where There's Smoke, which is just a full aggro thrash song. Freedom Rings has an awesome build-up, and Another Day to Die has some really solid riffing and memorable leads. Apparently this was their highest charting at number 31 on Billboard, and Metal Storm users named it the thrash metal album of the year. So there's that, but me personally, I think it's just okay. We got The Grinding Wheel in 2017. Another pretty lame starter here with Mean Green, Killing Machine, and Snakes and Barrels energy again with Goddamn Trouble. More goofy dad metal energy, and in addition to being pretty cringe, Shine On takes on a riff that has already been used by both Deftones and Slayer at this point. I do enjoy certain moments like the galloping D-beats of Our Finest Hour and pounding drum intro to Come Heavy, but really there's not a full song on this one I really enjoy all the way through. Yeah, this one also ended up at bad tier for me. Then we had The Wings of War in 2019. And it feels like, again, they kind of shook things up with this one, as I'm definitely hearing some major improvements. Great variety of styles on display here, a bit more of that heavy metal flair seeping in on tracks like Believe in the Fight and Head of a Pin is another head bobber. Distortion bringing some great atmosphere on top of the chuggy guitars and wailing solos. Pretty anthemic stuff too, with some Merciful Fate vibes. More fun D-beat headbanging and semi-crossover energy with Welcome to the Garden State. Love that bass hook on Where Few Dare to Walk, and fantastic drumming on Out on the Roadkill, courtesy of newcomer Jason Bittner of Shadows Fall, Toxic, and Flotsam and Jetsam fame. Honestly, this one's kind of a banger. I put it at fantastic. And that brings us to Scorched in 2023. Now, I wasn't particularly enthusiastic going into this one based on the pretty, again, paint-by-numbers sounding singles The Surgeon and Wicked Place, but as it turns out, Overkill somehow managed to just pick my least favorite songs for early promotion.
You blew it!
The opening title track sets a high bar from the start with the triumphant tapping guitars and great riffing on both guitar and bass. Pretty catchy chorus too. Similar notes for Twist of the Wick, which became a standout from the first listen, as did the banging Harder They Fall. And while closing track Bag of Bones has some super corny lyrics, it's just so much goddamn fun at the same time. It still has some somewhat weaker songs like the aforementioned singles Fever and Won't Be Coming Home, but even those have their moments. Going Home feels a little cheesy, but also has some banger hooks on the verses. So this one's not winning any overall end of the month or end of the year awards for me, but for a classic thrash album in the modern era, it's a pretty strong entry, and I liked it way more than I thought I would. So ultimately, this one is going to great tier. Y'all check out this playlist for more thrash metal related rankings, and again, let me know down in the comments, what were your rankings? How did we differ? But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.